clock reads 11 o'clock, at least here in Germany. So I'm going to start. Welcome to all of you to today's AAE webinar on implementing and auditing the new AAE course syllabus requirements. I expect that a couple of people will join over the next minutes, but still I think we are good to go and ready to start. So my name is Henning Bergen. I'm chair of the AAE Education Committee. With me today is Rafael Moreno, who will also present in some parts. He's co-chair of the AAE Education Committee. Some organizational aspects before we start. Rafael and I will share the presentation, so there'll always be some changes for you to whom you're going to listen to. Furthermore, we'll have at the end of the presentation quite enough time to take your questions, and we're very much looking forward to them. So please use in the toolbar on the right-hand side the question section to pose your questions. We'll at the end have a look and of course go into details. Furthermore, I very much hope you can all see and hear me quite well. I'm very happy to see a large group of participants for today's webinar, which we are very happy about. Also some very familiar names, some new names, that's great. And I very much appreciate you all participating. The agenda for today is quite short, and after the welcome and the introduction of the two of us, we will go into the AAE course syllabus, especially the requirements, what is said in the syllabus, what is said in the guidelines, what is the link to the AAE statutes, then how the Education Committee is planning on reviewing and auditing the syllabus, and then, as already mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So there you can see the two of us from some time ago. Right now, both Rafael and I are, as many of you are, within our home office situation, so not moving from the chair here at all. So then let's start. Again, if you have any questions, please use the corresponding function in the tool. That's the easiest for us. Rafael, would you then take over as discussed?
Yes. Okay, good morning to everybody. I hope you can hear me. As Henning said, we are very happy to see a very large group. So now we are 50 participants, and we are very happy to see well-known names as well as new names for us participating today in this new webinar about the AAE syllabus. I hope you all can hear me well, and you are seeing the third slide of the presentation that Henning and me will be developing jointly. We will try to keep your attention along the presentation with, let's hope, with fluent changes. Okay, in this first slide, just directly in the content of the webinar, we will try to highlight the basic elements of the framework for the AAE syllabus. It's very important to understand how the AAE syllabus is conceived, how is included in the AAE structure. And we must go to the statutes of the AAE as passed in, as amended for the last time last year. And if we go to Article 2, this article refers to the aims of the AAE. And in point 2 of this article, it says, okay, the aims of the AAE are to enhance the development and understanding of the actuarial profession in Europe, inter alia, prescribing educational standards and supporting mutual recognition of actuaries among member associations. There are all other aims, but these two aims are, as you can see, directly referring to the AAE syllabus. And then if we go to Article 5 in the statutes, in point number 1, it says actuarial associations applying for full membership must have a code of conduct that reflects at least the requirements of the AAE's Code of Professional Conduct and comply with minimum education standards as set out in the AAE's course syllabus for actuarial training in Europe. And this course syllabus is amended from time to time. It was set out in 1998, but it's amended from time to time. And then in Article 6, again, it says full member associations must sign the agreement. It refers to the mutual recognition agreement on a general system for the recognition of higher education diplomas awarded on completion of professional education and training. So, as you can see, the AAE uses the AAE syllabus is a very important tool in the conception of the AAE itself. Now, I hope I can move to the next slide. Yeah, and then we can go directly into the AAE syllabus document. And as I said, it was approved. It was passed for the first time for the General Assembly in 1988, but the latest version of the AAE core syllabus was passed by the General Assembly in October 2019. And it's of course available in the AAE website. In the slide, you can see the link. And the document includes both the guidelines, which explains how to use and the structure of the syllabus, and the syllabus itself, so the content of the syllabus. Member associations of the AAE have to implement the requirements of the AAE core syllabus by the end of 2022, the latest. It was a decision taken by the General Assembly. So the interpretation for this is that candidates starting their actuarial education afterwards have to follow the new AAE core syllabus. The information we have in the Education Committee is that most of the member association of the AAE are already implementing the new education core syllabus, as Henning will refer in the end of the presentation. AAE core syllabus has been reviewed and accepted by the IAA Education Committee. Such all the AAE member associations will not need to be reviewed separately by the IAA Education Committee. This is an important element, and it conditioned from the beginning the work of the task force that prepared the new AAE syllabus. The purpose of the task force, the commitment, was to respect as much as possible the IAA Education Committee, IAA syllabus, sorry, which was passed in 2017, so it would be easier for the European associations to fulfill the requirements of both associations, the European and the international. And then let's go for the next slide. If we go for the document itself, and we start by the guidelines. In the beginning of the document, in the guidelines, in the introduction, sorry, we can read this, that the core syllabus sets out framework for the academic formation of a professionally recognized actuary. The purpose of the core syllabus is to define a common understanding and to achieve harmonization of actuarial education across full membership associations. The core syllabus, together with its detailed learning areas, is intended to underpin the mutual recognition agreement and the statutes of the AAE. So you can see that the syllabus is a basic tool for mutual recognition agreement, which is a basic element of the AAE itself. It is the responsibility of national actuarial associations to have procedures ensuring the fulfillment of the requirements of the AA core syllabus. That members who are deemed by the association to be eligible for recognition under mutual recognition agreement have completed the association's education requirements, and in doing so have as a minimum fulfilled the requirements of the AAE core syllabus. Associations will submit evidence for this for review by the AAE, and this is important. At a minimum, an association must provide a mapping of their education program to the syllabus at a topic level. We will see that in this structure we have learning areas, and then we have topics and subtopics. The topics, the subtopics itself, themselves are learning objectives. They are written in a way which consists of learning objectives, but the mapping at least must be on a topic level. The guidelines also said that the AAE Education Committee will check compliance on a regular basis. It is also important to consider that the AAE core syllabus does not prescribe an education process. This is left to every national association because there are many different effective actuarial education and qualification programs varying from organization to organization. And then what is the structure of the syllabus? The syllabus consists of 9 learning areas, advanced skills, and necessary prerequisites. These prerequisites are referred to an education on foundation mathematics. I don't want to go much into detail in this part, but all learning areas in the core syllabus must be covered. It's important that some learning areas may be required as a pre-study by an association, or they will be, some topics could be covered before starting the formal actuarial education. The learning areas should not be treated as being of equal weight when prescribing a full qualification process. It depends on every association. Even different associations will give more or less weight to the different topics and subtopics within each learning area, depending on the needs for actuaries in the markets that each association operates. And then let me just add, referring to the advanced skills, this area is intended to complement the 9 basic learning areas, because it's understood that it's not enough to cover the 9 learning areas, but also include a stage for advanced skills. In this stage, some subjects and items are included which are needed for an actuary to demonstrate higher order skills of analysis, evaluation, and creation in a certain area of actuarial work. So each actuary is expected to have studied to the appropriate level in at least one area of advanced knowledge. And then if we go for depths of coverage, the core syllabus, following the line of which the IAE education syllabus started, illustrates the depth of knowledge and application by using the model of learning objectives created by Rex here from the Iowa State University, based on Bloom's taxonomy of education objectives. Henning will refer more into details to this. And in addition, to support for qualification routes only based on the actuarial education, the guidelines state that the complete workload of the education to become an actuary, so including prerequisites, all learning areas and advanced skills, should not be less than 240 credit points according to the European credit transfer system, including, and it also says, including a significant number obtained in an advanced study program, so a master degree, and not less than 90 credits devoted to the 9 learning areas as described in the core syllabus. And then finally, in the guidelines referring to the core syllabus development, the guidelines say that there is a commitment to keep the syllabus under review and to update it as appropriate, as needed, on a regular basis. It is important that the syllabus does not become obsolete over time and prepares actuaries to work in the context of current European legislation. This is very important. So by design, the AAE core syllabus covers all topics of the IAA education syllabus, as I referred before. This is also very important. And now I will pass to Henning. Yes.
So you should now be able to hear and see me again. As Rafa already mentioned, I would like to give a short look into the Bloom's taxonomy. I guess many of you have heard that in the past, some hopefully have not. This has been one of the deeper discussion points around setting up the syllabus and passing the syllabus, because in the past, the former syllabus only had like a list of topics that should be part of an actuarial education. But it was not well defined how deep and how broad the different topics should be covered within an actuarial education. So when setting up the syllabus, we had a deeper discussion on which way we should follow. And after quite some elaboration, the Bloom's taxonomy was chosen to look into. Here you see the general structure. It's a two-dimensional approach to say we do have different categories of knowledge, A, B, C, and D: factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. And how this kind of knowledge or skill is used will be described by the verb chosen. So there we are with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, starting from remember, recall, recognize, going over to understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. When you think about certain things that you have learned in the past or that you use nowadays, there are some things that you just remember that they exist, that you understand, but also things that you can apply or even evaluate by saying what is better, what is worse, model A versus model B, etc., etc., etc. So for an actuarial education, we can all imagine things that all actuaries should know or understand. For example, around jurisdictional basics, around economic behavior. So there we are in the areas 1, 2, and perhaps factual knowledge or conceptual knowledge. When we talk about actuarial application, real hardcore mathematics, we are in a way talking about 3, 4, 5, perhaps conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge. And when it comes down to, for example, an actuarial report or an actuarial statement, we are again in a different area of this structure. To give you a bit of hopefully better understanding, you'll find on the next slide a couple of examples from the AAE course syllabus. I hope they are chosen in a way to illustrate how this taxonomy works. So for example, explain the concepts of Monte Carlo simulation. There we are in a B2. Going back again, B2, understand a concept. This means that from the understanding of the syllabus, every future actuary following this education should be able to explain the concept, as it's said, of Monte Carlo simulation. We all know that there are many, many actuaries applying Monte Carlo simulation, which would be more than that. But again, here we are talking about the basic core of what every future actuary should know. Then going forward, calculate the value of a forward contract, B3. Again, we are in a conceptual knowledge, but in applying this. So it's a difference between understanding the basics and really applying it. Moving forward, calculate investment return on a project using different methods and evaluate each method, C5. So there we are in a procedural knowledge. That means it's an algorithm, procedures, as the name says, and then evaluate, check, critique, including the different methods. That's quite typical for C5. Describe common data structures and data storage systems. There we are in an A1, which only means that it's facts-based knowledge, and you only need to recall it or remember it. And last but not least, use common project management techniques to design and implement a work plan, C6, wrong direction. There we are in create, generate, so really produce something new in line with procedural knowledge. So you can see that by using learning objectives rather than saying an actuarial education should cover Monte Carlo simulation, which would have been what we are looking for. This gives a better understanding, that's the goal, on what it should be. You all know, at least colleagues coming from university or with a corresponding background, then you could do quite a lot on Monte Carlo simulation. But again, here's a clear limitation to what the core syllabus describes as a basic setting. So that's the Bloom's taxonomy that we use in the syllabus. And I then would again hand over to Raphael in a second. I only wanted to explain that, for example, in the DAV, which I represent, we use this Bloom's taxonomy as well. And we implemented it some years ago when setting up our new education structure. And of course, at the beginning, we struggled with it because we have around 100 people in our education and examination process, and not everyone was used to it, using learning objectives and a clear evaluation of those learning objectives. But it helps us a lot because we can now say very detailed what we are going to teach, until what depth we are going to teach, and then compare it to what we are going to examine. And of course, it's quite easy, even if you use the the signal words or the signal verbs to say, what do we want to see? Calculate the value of a forward contract. That's all, with, of course, specific numbers that can be calculated. You can directly aim with exam questions at what you want to see from an examinee. And of course, this helps us in both directions, education and examinations, when both groups really link to this way of writing down what should be achieved. Of course, not every association runs its own education system like the DAV does, but still, for us, it was really helpful to get all people on one page in the understanding of what the depth and breadth of the syllabus should look like, of our own national syllabus. So that's one example how an association can deal with that. I think, Rafael, you in Spain, of course, with a university-based approach, you have a different setup, right?
Yes, in Spain as well as in other countries where the actual education is mainly provided by universities, it's not so easy to implement this way of evaluating the depth of coverage. But okay, since the implementation of the Bologna system at the universities, I say we because, as many of you know, I'm a professor at the university. We are used to work with competencies which are quite similar to learning objectives. So we have introduced, in fact, many years ago, the way of designing studies working with competencies, and we changed the way we evaluate the students, the acquisition of the different competencies. So it's not so different as the way you can evaluate the acquisition of learning objectives using the Bloom's taxonomy, but it's not exactly the same. And we have an additional difficulty, which is that sometimes, or usually, I would say, the competencies are covered in different way in different courses. So from universities, it's needed a very strong effort of coordination in the study, not to repeat the same process of acquisition of a learning objective or a competency. So the whole package of the syllabus is efficient itself. But in my experience, it's challenging from universities, but it's completely possible. And we will refer again when we go into the auditing process. This is not only the case of Spain. There are many other examples, many other countries in Europe where the education is provided by universities. And sometimes the association runs its own examination, but it recognizes, at least at some level, the education provided by university. Okay, I will continue with the development of the content of the syllabus itself. I will try to make a quick review of the 9 basic learning areas and the advanced skills, and also the prerequisites on foundation mathematics, especially, of course, the 9 learning areas. The purpose of this part is just to make a review, to remind which topics are included in every learning area, so we can have a complete view of the syllabus. We will start with if you see this slide number 8, I would say the first learning areas are the areas which probably in some countries or associations will be covered not in a specific actuarial education program, but maybe in a previous program in economics or maybe in statistics or mathematics. It depends. Of course, not the case of economics and finance and financial systems for mathematics, but yes, for economics or finance. So it depends on the different profiles of students and countries. Okay, if we go for, try to move the slides. Okay, if we go for statistics, the topics that need to be covered, each of these topics have its own subtopics, which are written in a way of learning objective or competency. If we think on universities, we will provide some examples. So we have in the learning area of statistics, we have the topic of random variables, statistical inference, graduation and statistical tests, regression, Bayesian statistics and credibility theory, stochastic process and time series, and simulation. And for example, in the case of simulation, the last subtopic, just as an example, is written as use the bootstrap method to estimate properties of an estimator. By properties, we refer to the mean squared error. So it's you can see that subtopics are written in a way which it shows what learning objective must be fulfilled or covered or gained by the student. If we go for economics, then the topics are macroeconomics and microeconomics, and also financial economics. If we go for finance, we have financial reporting and taxation, securities and other forms of corporate finance, financial mathematics, and corporate finance. So, for example, students, actuarial students coming from a bachelor on statistics or mathematics will need additional education in this area, of course. Then in the fourth learning area, we have financial systems. For example, the aim of financial system, every learning area has its own aim, which you can read just after the name of the learning area. And for example, in the case of financial systems, the aim is to enable students to understand the financial environment in which most actuarial work is undertaken, and key products and principles of insurance, pensions, and other areas of traditional and emerging actuarial practice. This is the aim, and this aim will be achieved by learning, by acquiring all the learning objectives, including in the 4 topics that you can read there: role and structure of financial systems, participants in financial systems, financial products and benefits, and factors affecting financial system development and stability. Then we go for the learning area of assets, which has 4 topics, and the aim of assets is to enable students to apply asset valuation techniques and investment theory to actuarial work. It's a very important area, and the 4 topics are investment and markets, asset valuation, portfolio management, investment strategy, and performance measurement. The next learning area, which is, let's say, new in the syllabus, comparing with the old syllabus that we had in force, is data and systems. And we included this new area being consistent with the IAA syllabus, as I explained in my first intervention. The data and systems area aims is to enable students to apply methods from statistics and computer science to real-world data sets in order to answer business and other questions, in particular with application to questions in long and short-term insurance, social security, retirement benefits, healthcare, and investment. So as you can see, it's a very important area nowadays, and the actuarial profession needs to be up to date in this area and to be able to use these different techniques to these different areas. The topics are data as a resource for problem solving, data analysis, statistical learning, professional and risk management issues. This is important because we are a profession, so we need to think on how to use these techniques for our profession, considering all the issues around. And the last topic is visualizing data and reporting. Now we find that, let's say, the more traditional learning areas, but these areas are packaged in a different way comparing with the old, let's say, the old syllabus of the actuarial education of Europe. We find the learning area actuarial models, whose its aim is to enable students to apply stochastic processes and actuarial models to actuarial work, in particular to applications in long and short-term insurance, social security, retirement benefits, healthcare, and investment. And the topics included in this learning area are principles and actuarial modeling, fundamentals of severity models, fundamentals of frequency models, fundamentals of aggregate models, survival models, and actuarial applications. In this learning area, it was not only this one, but in this learning area, this learning area was one of the areas in which the education committee accepted to or approved to include some additional elements comparing with the IAA syllabus, and even modifying some of the learning objectives from the IAA syllabus in order to adapt more to the European tradition, let's say, tradition and culture. And then the new learning area, which is a very important one as well, it's actuarial risk management. Including this area means or reflects how important is the area of risk management for actuaries in the current environment. And we have, okay, the aim is to enable students to apply core aspects of individual risk management and enterprise risk management through the analysis of risk management issues faced by an entity and to recommend appropriate solutions. So now we can feel how important it is not only to get the knowledge, but to be able to apply it in a way that the professional is able to recommend appropriate solutions. And then we have 5 topics, which are the risk environment, risk identification, risk measurement and modeling, risk mitigation and management, and risk monitoring and communication. Then we find a new learning area, which is personal and actuarial professional practice. It's this area is challenging for universities because this learning area is not, I would say, not so academic as ours can be, but of course it's very important for a profession. So what most of the universities are doing is, I'm talking from my experience from Spain, is that the universities use the professional association, and the professional association offers its members, its professionals, to collaborate in the development of this learning area, maybe covered by different courses at the university or seminars, cross seminars. So the experience is interesting itself. And the aim is to enable students to apply their technical knowledge and skills in an effective, practical, and professional manner. The topics are effective communications, problem solving and decision making, professional standards, professionalism in practice, and international and institutional awareness of professional standards. So I would say that the last three topics are covered mainly in these specific courses or seminars provided by professionals coming from the association, and maybe the two first topics, talking from a university perspective, which Henning can complement, talking from an association which runs its own examination. So the first two topics is more the way the different learning areas and topics are developed in the different courses. So it's more cross or transversal. Then we go for, these are the 9 basic learning areas. And then, as I mentioned in the previous intervention, we find the advanced skills. This is very important because the student actuaries must demonstrate the ability to develop higher order skills of analysis, evaluation, and creation. So in this area, this additional area, is where mainly the students need to demonstrate their ability of apply and evaluate and create the different elements that they have gained across or along the education process. The advanced areas are life pensions, general insurance, enterprise risk management, healthcare, even management, data science. All these areas can be, it doesn't mean that the student need to go to every area, but in these areas, in these possible areas, the student can demonstrate or must demonstrate, at least in one of them, the higher level of skills he or she has acquired along the process. Where there is relevant European Union and country-specific legislation, student actuaries must acquire a full understanding of that legislation over the knowledge acquired in the learning areas. How the advanced skills can be obtained? Okay, these advanced skills can be obtained through deeper studies, through research, for example, or through practical application of actuarial principles. And again, talking from a university perspective, what happens in most of the cases is that at the end of its period of his or her period as a student, the student needs to present a master thesis where he or she must demonstrate the acquisition of these advanced skills, developing a complete study in very detail or in very deeply in one specific topic. And then I will hand over to Henning, I think. Okay, Henning is doing it. Thank you, Henning.
You're more than welcome, but it takes a couple of clicks. So there we are again. After Rafael quite in detail explained what the content, the real content, well, the content of the syllabus is, I would like to go a bit more into detail on the guidelines. The whole governance system of the syllabus is something that you perhaps know from many other areas, that there's in detail a description on the content, that there's a general setting within the statutes to say you have to follow the syllabus, and then there are on different levels, different set of requirements, and going down from level to level, it's more in detail, because the rest is that of course there are some principles at the beginning. I would like to show the guidelines, which are available on the website as well, a bit more in detail without reading out word by word. Highlighted, you will see the main statement from this part. So for example, in Article 5, it's clearly stated that it is the responsibility of the National Actuarial Association to have procedures ensuring the fulfillment of the requirements of the course syllabus. This is something that, from the understanding of the Education Committee and of course of the General Assembly, is something that directly follows from the statutes, that it's up to the association to have the procedures in place as a minimum fulfillment of the requirements of the AAE course syllabus. Article 5 continues with associations will submit evidence. This is something that more or less follows from this. And as Rafael already mentioned earlier, at a minimum, an association must provide a mapping of their education program to the syllabus at a topic level. So not on level of every learning objective, but rather on the topic level. This is what we had earlier on. I'll jump back. For example, this is the topic level statistics. In well-founded, and this is quite important, in well-founded exceptional cases where topics of the syllabus are not covered, associations must show to the satisfaction of the AAE Education Committee that alternative syllabus subjects and their assessment level provide equivalent development of a professional actuary to that equivalent to the AAE requirements. So for example, if we go back, I think we can all agree on that, for example, if you skip parts of actuarial models, whatever that might be, severity models, frequency models, you would have to, it would at least be questionable if that can then be a proper actuarial education. Whereas, for example, in the assets area, when you talk about asset valuation, portfolio management, and investment strategy, you could perhaps imagine having a substitute for those areas, for example, in data and systems or in other parts. So I think we can, finance is another example. So I think we can all in a way agree on that this describes some kind of flexibility on how national education routes or local education routes cover the syllabus, and in what cases topics can be exchanged for others. And again, we are talking on a topic level, not on a subtopic level, not on a learning objective level. Continuing, Article 5, Education Committee will check compliance on a regular basis. Procedures are laid out in the document audit process to check compliance, which is a document by the Education Committee, which has been passed in spring 2020, and I will go into this following those slides. A suggested Bloom's taxonomy category is included in the AAE course syllabus for each subtopic as an indication of the depth recommended. This is not meant to be prescriptive, but is intended to assist in setting out the guidelines for the depth of knowledge and skill needed for an actuary. I think that's something we have touched and covered earlier on, that it's in a way a not prescriptive guideline for an association to level the education. Article 19 of the guidelines, in addition and as a support for qualification routes only based on university education, it should be noted that the complete workload of the education to become an actuary should not be less than 240 credit points according ECTS. So again, this is perhaps even more than the guideline, should not be less than 240 credit points, including a significant number obtained in an advanced study program. This is perhaps something in comparison to the Bloom's taxonomy to say, if we have a university-based education route, is there a benchmark we could level ourselves against, or which we can take into consideration. Article 20, several competencies are laid out in the learning objectives might not be obtained only through theoretical studies. Therefore, a minimum of 2 years of practical actuarial experience should be required by a full member association to fulfill the requirements of the course syllabus. I've mentioned already earlier the review principles. This is then the next level of explaining how the audit and the review of the course syllabus requirements will take place. As already mentioned, the document has been passed by the committee in spring 2020. By design, you all know that every association has a representative within the education committee, so it's accessible for everyone, or for every association. General rules to support and interpret principles of the AAE course syllabus guidelines. So let's jump in. The AAE Education Committee will perform a check for compliance on a regular basis. That's 1-to-1 from the guidelines, which means every 2 years when implemented. Audit will take place at the same time for all member associations to give the Education Committee similar understanding when reviewing the association. So what we do not want to do is to say we review association 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and having a not stable level of reviewing. So that's why we agreed to do the review at the same time, which of course will then produce some work for the committee members, but still we had the feeling that this is a fair and transparent approach for everyone. Follow-up reviews might be light touch when the association shows that nothing has changed and that the syllabus is still the same. Member associations will have to provide standardized information for the compliance check. We go back to the mapping that Raphael has mentioned, and we will come back to this later on, to provide a mapping of the national routes to fulfill the requirements versus the AAE course syllabus. And again, spreadsheet to be used by member associations. All 9 basic learning areas need to be covered. We have touched this. The National Association has to present its assessment of the coverage of the education route or education routes that qualify for the purpose of the mutual recognition agreement, where the minimum has to be covered. The Education Committee will ask for proof by the association under review that the necessary level is met. So for example, quality assurance processes, a statement of the oversight body when necessary, sample examinations where available in combination with the education regulations, etc., etc., etc. This is something which is not defined above this or beyond this level, because we will then be in a review process to see what is the situation of the member association of the AAE, what is in their hands, what can be provided, and what is their governance what is their governance, so that we can then say, okay, what kind of documentation, proof requirements will we have a look at in combination with the mapping between local qualification and the AAE course syllabus. The AAE Education Committee will, in a similar way, check the existence of advanced skills in the national education process. Of course, we understand that this is very different from the core qualification. So for some associations, this might even go into a separate credential. So when we talk of the difference between associate membership and fellow membership. For some associations, this is, for example, the master's thesis. For some associations, this might only be a set of additional exams in addition to what's covered in the course syllabus and the basic 9 learning areas. So this is a very principles-based explanation on how we will look into this, but we understand that this is different from association to associations. Of course, the AAE Education Committee decides whether an association fulfills the criteria for compliance or not. Again, all member associations of the AAE have a seat in the Education Committee. So every association will participate actively in the review of all associations. So this is, of course, me wanting to tell you to involve in the work of the Education Committee. This just as a basic statement, includes the coverage of practical experience as defined by the course syllabus. So the spreadsheet. This is something we have been working on in a small task force of the committee. So what you see is a status that has not yet been passed by the Education Committee. It's our goal to do this in the spring meeting. So afterwards, we can then start off the review process. So this is a draft version accepted by the task force, but not yet finalized. So we have not provided the file, but only two screenshots just to give you some expectation on what you will receive later on. You can see we will have some general information, of course, around your association, your education. We will ask for detailed information on the education program or education programs. So if you have different kinds of membership categories, we'll ask for an explanation of that. If the course syllabus is required, if working experience is required, so covering really what the syllabus is asking for, how this route will look like, association only, university, and then we'll ask for the university programs to be reviewed. And as the university programs might or will differ, I expect that, we will ask for a spreadsheet for every education route members putting in a position to use the mutual recognition agreement. And the second slide we would like to show you is this one, where you can see we'll jump into statistics. Here you'll see topic, subtopic, random variables, and the learning objectives. You'll have the Bloom's taxonomy. So this is just what the AAE course syllabus over here defines. And here we'll ask for your input, local education program. What we tried to do is give you and your association the flexibility to give us, the Education Committee, the information that you can provide. So for example, from a DAV point of view, I could then say, this is covered for the DAV part in our pre-knowledge that we ask from the university program, or in our topic, applied stochastics. So this is what we will fill in over here. We will fill in the learning objective that we have, plus we use Bloom's taxonomy. So we fill in the Bloom's taxonomy corresponding to this. Yes, I understand that this is not what's asked by guidelines at syllabus. But again, this from my experience is what in a perfect way shows how we cover the syllabus. I do understand that for some associations this is not possible, especially when it comes to university-based educations. That's why we include the credit point sheet over here, to which I would like to hand over to Raphael to discuss this a bit more.
Thank you again, Henning. Yes, as Henning was saying, in the case of associations which use the universities as education provider, this compliance check is it takes much more work, because the association needs to make a check with every university, and then include it will need to include a sheet for every university in this Excel file that it will need to be provided to the AAE Education Committee. So it will take an effort from the association itself and from every university. So it's much desired, and this is the feeling from the members of the Education Committee, which represent associations or countries where the university is the provider of the actual education. It will be desirable that the sheet which the association uses to make the compliance will be as much as possible aligned with the Excel with the spreadsheet which the Education Committee will provide, in order to make it easier to all the process and to reduce the workload for the universities and for the association itself. And if you remember my comment on the Bloom's taxonomy, in some cases, in many cases, it will not be easy to find a clear coverage for every subtopic, but we will need to refer to the topic itself. And the way we will be able to appreciate if the topic is appropriately covered is by the number of ECTS points or credits we can see in the Excel file. So it will need an additional effort from universities. Every university and the association will need to check if the learning objective or competency is covered even in different courses, because this will be probably happen. But in the end, the university itself will need to be able to allocate the number of credits that the topic is receiving in the whole program. And I hope this is clarifying some of the questions or some of the issues that could be raised by universities. And from the Education Committee, we are willing to be positive and productive for every association which would eventually need some help to work properly with the compliance check. So I think, Henning, will you hand over for the end of the presentation? Will you take the presentation to finish?
Yes, happy to do so.
Great.
I think more or less we are done with what we have presented up front. We would now take a short break of, well, let's use the tool. Are you fine with a 5 minutes break, or do you need 10 minutes to have a break? 5 minutes, please raise your hand. Perfect, that's 54%. So we'll take a 5 minute break until 10 past 12. And we'll come back. Happy to take your questions in between or afterwards. We already have a couple of questions. We'll show them later on the screen, go through, and Raphael and I will try to answer as good as possible your questions. So talk to you in now 4 minutes. We have received a couple of questions, and for the ones who have not yet submitted one or still have one, please use the questions function within the tool on the right-hand side. I'll go through the questions, and perhaps, Raphael, you can also unmute yourself so that we can both, in a way, jump in and add what we have in mind on those things. I'll start off. What does it mean to start your actuarial education if the actuarial education consists of both BSc and a master's? Does the new course syllabus only affect students starting the BSc program in 2023 later on? What if the students are very delayed in their studies? Well, that's a very good and a very suitable question. Well, in general, I would say that if you can consider a program as a whole set of program, then yes, that only affects the people starting in 2023. If you really look into the Bologna structure and say an actuary degree is really consisting of a bachelor and a master's degree, that's something where the association has really to look into. So, for example, an association would then need to decide to say, would we accept a member that finished his or her bachelor's degree in something like 2005 and the master's degree in 2025? Would that be a member we would automatically accept without any further discussion? So in general, the question is a person accepted for the mutual recognition agreement? And that's the question to be answered. So I think it's less, but that's my personal opinion, less a question for the education committee, but rather for the national local association how to deal with those kinds of cases. So perhaps, Raphael, is there something you would like to add?
No, I agree with you, Henning. That's also my understanding.
Okay, very good. Then second point, when you talk about additional elements for the AAE course syllabus to the IAA course syllabus, do you indeed mean additional so that the AAE requirements will in no way less than those of the IAA? Well, what we mean with additional is that we have really added additional topics, subtopics, and learning objectives to the IAA syllabus. So it's no surprise, the IAA syllabus, Raphael mentioned that earlier on, was our starting point, but we added some points, not only into actuarial models, but also into statistics, into personal and professional practice, where, for example, and that's what I know by heart, we added a complete paragraph on supranational organizations. So for the AAE education, we ask for candidates knowing that the AAE exists. We ask for that the IAA exists, what their competencies, what their tasks are, what their goals are. That's something that's not completely not in the IAA syllabus. on the professional understanding, but we had the feeling that we want to have that in the AAE course syllabus. We have not deleted any learning objective. We have not lowered the Bloom's taxonomy in comparison to the IAA. So we are really talking about additional elements that are in the AAE course syllabus, which from my understanding made it quite easy for the IAA Education Committee to give a kind of system accreditation to say if an association fulfills the requirements of the AAE course syllabus, it more or less automatically fulfills the IAA requirements. Next question, Article 20 of the guideline requirements of a minimum of 2 years of practical experience to be fully qualified under the new course syllabus. We don't have that requirement by now. Should we then amend our requirement accordingly? I would touch back on that, what I said earlier on. We talk about people being, or qualification routes being eligible for the mutual recognition agreement. So, for example, at least from my understanding, an association could say, we do not have this requirement for everyone in place, but for a member that's fit for the mutual recognition agreement, we check that this candidate has a minimum of 2 years of practical experience to become such a member. But that's my explanation. Perhaps, Rafael, you could add a bit to this.
No, it depends on every association, indeed. For example, in the Spanish association, in order to benefit from the mutual recognition agreement, we require 5 years of experience. So it depends on every association. They recommend what the AAE syllabus says it's a minimum of 2 years. So, okay, this is an area where the associations need to make its own analysis and to take their decisions.
Good. Just to clarify, university programs can use column L and disregard to a large degree columns G to K, but would need to explain in detail which courses provide the ECTS. In general, yes. I think we would need to have a common understanding of the people that work with the spreadsheet, as well as the ones reading it in the education committee. So in general, yes, that's the basic understanding, to say how do we cover certain areas of the syllabus, how many credit points are included, and how do we cover this. And if you do not do it, which is you're right, or which you can do this by every line. We do it in a different way. So in general, yes, that's my understanding. I hope, Rafael, that's yours as well.
Yes, it's the same, exactly same as yours.
Very good. That's good. Next question. When do you expect the auditing process to take place? Rafael, I think you mentioned early on that we had a discussion in the last education committee meeting that we went around the virtual table saying, how far are you in implementing the syllabus? We would need to pass the mapping, the spreadsheet document.
Yeah.
And I expect then to start with the review for those associations that can be reviewed. Of course, this is not 100% in line that we would like to have all reviews taking place at the same time. But I think we do have some associations that already follow the new course syllabus. And then from my understanding, it would make sense to have those associations in a review process rather than waiting until 2023 when all associations have to implement, or by then have to implement the syllabus. So in general, I think that this would be the right way forward to start in summer 21.
Mm-hmm.
So one last question regarding mutual recognition. What are the arrangements with the Institute of Actuaries UK given the Brexit? Well, we do have a member of the MRA task force present, Raphael. Is there something that's already discussed up to a state where either the AAE or the IFOA have a clear understanding on how to go forward?
Yeah, thank you, Henning. Okay, the AAE, as Henning is saying, has a mutual recognition agreement task force, which is reviewing the mutual recognition agreement once the IFOA expressed last year that he had some legal concerns and that it was not able to continue applying the mutual recognition as it is, the mutual recognition agreement as it is. So what this task force is analyzing is how we should modify the mutual recognition agreement in order to be satisfying for all the members of the AAE in the next future. But we need to consider that for example, the UK, the European directives will not be applicable, which is not a major problem in itself, because we have some other countries which are not members of the European Union but have some treatments with the European Union, so the mutual recognition agreement is also applicable for them. So the challenge this task force is facing is important. There are some other members of the task force participating in this webinar, as for example, I've seen Malcolm Campbell, and perhaps he could make a remark. The purpose of the task force, as I was saying, is to make a proposal to reword or to modify the mutual recognition agreement in this new environment, and also the Hoiberg letter. And it also needs to consider some elements, some new elements, as for example, including CPD, or if we should be looking at some items of the AAE syllabus. But as I'm explaining, the task force is already working, so we will need to wait and have a proposal for the next General Assembly in autumn.
Yes, thank you very much, Raphael. So you see, we cannot completely answer the question, as it's still an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
I would like to unmute Gabor Hanak. I hope, Gabor, I'll select the right one. You should now be able to speak. It did not work out as planned. Perhaps I'll give it later on another try. There you are, Gabor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay. I made a mistake when I asked the question about the relationship between the IAA and AAE core syllabuses. I made a mistake because I don't like restricting, education requirement to the syllabus, the so-called syllabus. I'm not quite sure about the AAE, but in the IA there are two documents concerning education requirements, and one is called education guidelines, and the other one is called education syllabus. Now, the syllabus is simply a list of learning areas, topics, and subtopics, and I don't think it's the core of the issue. So I think it's more important, perhaps, what's written and what is contained in the guidelines. So, and it's not a linear, document. It's a complex document. So. My real question should have been perhaps that, considering both the education guidelines and syllabus of the IAA, and similarly for the AAE, could you say that if one associate is compliant with the AAE requirements concerning all the guidelines and the syllabus itself, that association will be automatically compliant with the IAA concerning their guidelines? And the second sub-question to this, what is the AAE's policy should the IAA change its education requirements, including the guidelines and the syllabus? Syllabus is less important in this respect. So I'm not expecting you a very definite answer, but like there is a principle within the AAE that if the IA issues standards, then it may well be the case that the AAE will say, okay, this is a good standard for us. So in this context, can you explain the position, your position, or the education committee's position, or the AAE's? Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Gabo, for going more into detail. And I absolutely support your point that the whole education requirements is a two-pillar based system. This holds true for the AAE as well as for the IAA. So the AAE setup is also the syllabus itself with the content, the learning objectives, etc., etc., etc. Those are very similar for the IAA as well as for the AAE. The similarity, but also holds true for the guidelines that both systems have. And there we have a very good starting point where many members of our AAE Education Committee are also members of the IAA Education Committee. So you always have a large group of people within the IAA framework at the education committee level, knowing what they are talking about. Having this in mind, with regard to your first question, I can say yes, that's what the IAA Education Committee stated in its review, that if an association fulfills the AAE requirements, they automatically fulfill the IAA requirements with regard to content, as well as with regard to the governance around it, the setup around it. This, and I think I understand where your question is coming from, includes the understanding that the IAA education allows quite some flexibility, starting off with the statutes, going into the guidelines, going into the syllabus content. The flexibility is, from my understanding, a bit less within the AAE environment, as we have the mutual recognition agreement. This is understood from the IAA. So having this in mind, if at some point in future, and this is my personal expectation, the IAA comes into a position where it changes its guidelines or its requirements for education, we in a way have to restart this process to say the IAA has to look what the AAE is asking for in their process, in their reviews. Does this automatically, without any further additional review, completely fulfill our IAA 2.0 requirements? At the moment, that's the way it is. But of course, it depends on the current regulations IAA and AAE have in place. So this might change in future. And then, of course, if we see a change in governance with the IAA, we as an AAE have to have a look into it and say, do we want to follow? Can we follow? Is there a surplus in following? And that's what the future will bring from my understanding. I hope, Gabor, this answers your questions. If not, you can, of course, use, again, the questions section, and we can then go later into detail. We have received one additional question. I'll not copy it to the sheet because it's quite straightforward. The review spreadsheet is just in a draft state. So it has not been passed by the education committee, and sorry for the education committee members in presenting this draft already today, just before having a final version of it. But we wanted, Raphael and I, we wanted to use the opportunity today to give you a sense of what we are aiming at. And this is the version that has been passed by the task force. We will bring it to the education committee's attention in our April meeting, and then have it hopefully finalized more or less directly afterwards, so it then can be shared with all member associations, to then be, of course, shared with your educational providers, universities, etc., etc., etc. So if I see it correctly, that should be all the questions we received. Are there any more questions? Happy to take them, because we do have a couple of more minutes. And if we have something to discuss or to have a deeper look into, then we're happy to do so. I see that there's one hand being raised. Perhaps you can use the questions section, if there's still one. Perhaps give you 2 or 3 more minutes. Raphael, is there something you would like to add in motivating participants?
No additional comment from my side.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's anything more to discuss. Of course, you can always get in touch with us directly through the AAE if questions come up later on. Again, we'll have the next meeting of the Education Committee in April. There we will continue into looking into the review process. Thank you very much for your participation, for the questions you have posed. This is very helpful for us to work on this, continue working on this, and of course, more or less with every review process, this is something we need to do together. So this is not only for the Education Committee or by the Education Committee, but we need the support from all member associations, really looking into the topics, really finding things that could be elaborated, could be advanced. But again, this is something we need to work on. So thank you very much for participating, for your very active participation, for so many of you joining. Thank you very much. Take care, and hope to see you soon and talk to you soon in the future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.